paperwork is like the first start of beginning to let someone go. And oftentimes they don't realize that. And it may be 6 months or a year from now. It's not like 1 week later. But oftentimes, if you're older and you start seeing paperwork and you haven't in the past, unless you feel like your performance or something's fallen off, that's also a way that a company can kind of look to make changes, if you will.
Hi, welcome to Over 50 TV. My name is Lou Reyes, and once again, I have been honored to have Joric McLean with us. Joric, as you know, or you may know if you follow Over 50 TV, Joric is an HR expert. He is also the former HR manager for the Phoenix Suns. Joric has a ton of experience in HR, and whenever a viewer pops up with a question, and they ask me, I know who I'm going to go to. I'm going to the expert. I'm going to the guru of HR, Joric McLean. And Joric, welcome to our show today.
Hey, thanks again for having me. I enjoy being here, and hopefully I'm giving some good information to your audience.
No, you definitely are, Joric. I get a lot of questions of people asking, and people want to know this question. Say how an employee should handle a write-up. Can you shed some light on that?
Yeah, I can give philosophically from an employee, they're nervous. They're probably, hey, come to HR, come to the boss's office, and you have this document in front of you. Things that you should be looking for is, although you're nervous, you may be upset, you may be frustrated, you may think that this is a bunch of baloney. There are some key things that I think are important when you're looking at the documentation. And first things first is the who, what, where, when, and why. So if we're in a meeting and you say, Lou, Joric, I'm going to write you up, you've been rude at work. Yeah. Okay, so that explains something, but that's very vague. When was I rude? Who was I rude to? What was the situation? Having that spelled out in the documentation is very important, because if you're going to sign off on something that's going to go in your file or may get used against you someday if you're getting let go or something of that nature, you want to make sure that if you did something, what was the infraction? When did it happen? Who did it happen against? Where in the handbook or policy or notification, what rule or violation did you break, and have that spelled out in writing? That needs to be there for sure. You don't want to sign anything. It's kind of an old adage, don't sign anything unless you've looked through it thoroughly. The document should also have in there something about the training or development you were given, or the expectation that you wouldn't be rude to somebody. So were there any harassment training? Did you watch any videos at the time of hire? Have you been sent off to any courses, or whether it be online? COVID world, we're not being sent off anywhere. It's all Zoom calls and meetings like this. But is there any specific training or development that was given to you that you should have known that you still created this violation? And then lastly, and to me, the most important thing about a write-up, if you're a good HR manager, I believe, and a good company, you should have in there what you're going to do to help the employee moving forward. So if you're rude, we're going to send you to a course, or you're going to take this, or I'm going to sit down for a couple of hours and we're going to role play scenarios so that hopefully moving forward over a period of time, we can get you out of that behavior. That to me is vital, but it's vital to have the training and development piece in there of what the company's going to do to help you change that behavior. If that's not in there, one, I would ask that they put it in, because there's some expectation. If you want me to change, then there should be, yes, part of it's on the employee, but part of it should be on the business. If they don't put anything in there, then it may be a sign that it's like, okay, maybe they're starting the paperwork process that's going to be the first of a few write-ups that's going to fill whatever the legal requirement is to 3 strikes and you're out at a business. If the company's not offering you any help, then the company's just saying, okay, we're going to keep doing this until hopefully you go away or we make a decision to let you go. That to me is, it's not fair to the employee. It's also shoddy management and shoddy HR. If there isn't, and if you ask and they say, well, it's up to you, then that's kind of the writing on the wall to say, okay, they don't want you here. and you can fight it and you can keep trying. But if they're not going to help at all, or at least give you some suggestions on courses or things you can do differently to modify your behavior or whatever you supposedly did wrong, then that's a sign to start looking for another line of work or work someplace else. Be careful about signing off on any document, but the wording and the verbiage can be written in a way that you just have to try to be mindful. As much as you are frustrated and stressful in that room at that time, try to take a deep breath and read it and make sure that you're okay signing off on whatever should be changing or not moving forward.
So I've got a bunch of questions. You've given us a really great outline there. Let's just say I'm called in HR and they say, okay, Lou, we're going to write you up for whatever infraction. And what if you totally disagree that you did anything wrong? I mean, number one, if you disagree, should you be adding or asking to add something to that? Should you not sign it, period? I mean, what's your thoughts on that? Great
question. I would ask, hopefully the HR person, or if oftentimes there's the manager that might be in the room as well, and say, okay, I disagree with this. I don't believe that this happened. I didn't believe I did this action. I would give my position. They may both look at me and go, okay, thanks, but we still want you to sign this. I would sign, and I have signed on my own.
You would sign even though you disagree.
Sign. But I signed specifically, I do not agree with this write-up. And then I signed my name below where I wrote that down. And I've done that in my own case. I can think of 2 instances in over 20 years where an employee disagreed with the situation. And I didn't know it was a manager and employee situation that I got involved in for the write-up. So I didn't know. The employee could be 100% right, and the manager may be looking to railroad the employee. So I took that signature and I said, okay, here's the situation. I need to investigate that more. There was going to be kind of a development plan of going to, it actually happened to be a harassment seminar. And I said, you're not going to go to that right now. I need to investigate and find out, get to the bottom of this. It may still end up with me asking, or the company asking you to do some a training, but it may end up after we're done here, you may not have anything to do, and I may be talking to your manager more, which is a conversation between me and your manager, not you. But that person that did that, I completely acknowledged, and we stopped the meeting because it wasn't, and there was no good thing that was going to happen from people. The he said about that situation wasn't going to go anywhere.
Let me ask you this though, Joric. Okay, we started out, you kind of gave an example of a person who is rude to somebody else. And if it was me, if I'm being written up and you say, and you're the HR manager and you say, okay, you were rude to this employee. Number one, I'd like to have that employee in that HR office to have a discussion. Do you recommend that?
I am. Okay. I'll give you my HR answer. And my HR answer is I think you should be, the HR person should be having a one-on-one with each person, not 3 people in the room. It should be individually. When I started, there would be 3 people in the room. So people may want, let's say if it's the victim or the accused or accuser, everyone was in the room hashing it out. And I think over time, we found out that it didn't really get anywhere, and you don't solve the issue. But oftentimes it's a superior, and so it's management and an employee. So an employee has a hard time standing up to a manager or someone, just because it's a situation of, okay, how do I respectfully talk to my boss without it sounding like I'm talking back to my boss, especially if my boss thinks I'm doing something wrong. HR should be in there to referee, but it should be separate conversations. But I will say some old school HR people, so there's some that are left that are still doing it, may still bring both parties in. I will say that most lawyers will say that's a really bad idea, and it's just going to escalate the situation.
I agree. I could see where it would escalate the situation. I think if you totally disagree with that, I guess it would depend on that HR manager's or the HR department's policy or even their philosophy. But let's go to the second point where you've talked about training, and I wrote some notes down here. what if you're working at a company, you were never trained on whatever the complaint is, or whatever you're signing this, you're being written up for something that you knew nothing about. What do you do then?
I hope that employees feel comfortable enough. Again, it's a stressful situation. They're in front of HR, maybe in front of their boss, that they're able to say, hey, I wasn't trained on this. I have no idea. And the document in that conversation should illustrate, okay, we didn't teach you how to do this or how to talk to somebody a certain way. And since you have no training, the write-up should stop at that point. And then you move on. And then hopefully at some point, the company is sending you for training or bringing training in or doing some one-on-one. I think if you look up, sometimes HR is a good barometer of how the company, like the conscience of the company. And if you have a good HR person that's looking out for your interest as much as they can, although we're all working for the business, that's important, because that gives you some insight as to what they have to deal with the C-suite and the corporate people. And I'll touch on people that are older. If you've had a really good career where you've flown under the radar, and other than reviews, you don't see paperwork, and you start seeing it, that is also a sign. And I can also speak from when people have been downsized or there have been layoffs. Paperwork is like the first start of beginning to let someone go. And oftentimes they don't realize that. And it may be 6 months or a year from now. It's not like 1 week later. But oftentimes, if you're older and you start seeing paperwork and you haven't in the past, unless you feel like your performance or something's fallen off, that's also a way that a company can kind of look to make changes, if you will.
Yeah, it's so funny. I'm listening to it and I'm thinking it doesn't bode well for employees in general, but in particular, probably older people are the ones who really have to be more concerned. It really seems that way. Well, Joric, I want to thank you a lot. I really appreciate, once again, I appreciate your addressing this really important question to me. How to handle a write-up, and I think you've given us a real good outline on that.
Hey, I appreciate it. I hope the audience gets something out of it. And please do not sign something unless you feel comfortable that you did the act. Otherwise, say that, at least sign off, but say that I didn't do it or I don't agree with it. It will help you in the long run.
No, I agree with you completely. Thanks so much, Joric.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate it. Take care.